Okay, so the first thing I want to do before we color correct this stuff is actually just get the shadows correct. Again, I talked about how we have isolated the CG object and then we have the background. So I'm going to go to this node right here, which is my overall shadow here. So you can see I'm looking at this, and then I got to make a couple adjustments here. So first thing is think about the amount of shadow, the expanse of the shadow, and the intensity of the shadow. The intensity of the shadow, or the darkness of the shadow, cannot be any darker than the darkest dark of your original plate shot. Otherwise, you've got a problem with your black points and so forth. So you can actually use the curve tool to analyze the max and min pixel sample of the darkest dark of your backplate. Obviously, it's probably back here. So if I again just take my original plate here, so I'll just come right here. I'm probably going to, at this point, add another one of those clamp nodes because I think there might be something going on here with the footage. Regardless, I'm going to clamp it right there. I'm clamping any weird extraneous details. So with that said, I'm going to come over here and just take a look and put my viewer just after the clamp. And now I can go ahead and do some sampling here. So I'm going to close all these off and just see that my darkest dark is like a value of like 0.005. So I cannot have my shadow area go that I've added here with these two direct shadow inclusion go any darker than that. So I'm going to put my viewer to it. And again, the first thing to do is look at the amount of shadow, the expanse of the shadow, because I want to make sure I establish that before I start color correcting this thing. So I have these pieces in here, and the question is, like, do I need more shadow, like in this crevice here? And you'll find that when you use this occlusion shadow gain, you can push it down so far, and you're still like, what the heck? I want more shadow. So you could double this up by copy and pasting this grade node and plugging it through. Now you can see we get more shadow, but as you do this, you'll notice that the shadow's intensity might be too much. So for instance, and I'll just kind of establish it right here, you're like, I'll take this maybe and multiply halfway. So you can see I've added even more shadow areas, but the question is, if I put my viewer to this occlusion node, are these shadows basically lower than 0.008? So I can sample that and take a look. So again, I can just come in here, poke around. You can see I'm at 0.006. What is that? Oh, that's 0.008. So I'm getting close. So one of the things you can do with these grade nodes is, besides just taking the gain down, you can actually take the lift and actually lift up the actual shadow information. So it is shadow, it's darkening the shadow, but you can also come over here and add a value of like 0.003. And even though the shadow's there, it's not actually darkening it past the blackest black point of your scene. I also want to dial down the intensity of both of these because it's way too blue. And again, the way you can figure that out is add a saturation node in here and just take a look at it from a value of 10. And you'll see that this is way too blue now compared to the two shadow references. This is very bluish, this shadow's very dark. So I'm going to balance those two out by taking these two grade nodes and taking the black point and dialing those down a little bit. So I'll half that to about 4, half that to about 4. Now you're seeing a shadow that matches pretty much here and here, but not here in the dark. So maybe I'll put this down to 3, put this down to 3. I'm trying to balance the shadow between here and here. So again, it's whatever. So now I'll just get rid of this saturation and take a look at it. And yeah, that looks about right. Again, I got my shadows, the intensity of my shadows, the expansion of the shadows. If you want to expand the shadows out a little bit, you can come back to this grade node. I talked about this before, and take the gamma and shift it to the left. And that will crush the blacks out. So you can see if I do that, the shadows are now expanding. If I put it the other way, the shadows are retracting. So again, that's just the way gamma does. Gamma takes a blurred image between black and white and either expands it out in one direction or the other. So with that said, we can go ahead and come down here now and just take a look, make one final judgment call before we start color correcting these screens. And I'd say we're looking pretty good. It's a little bit too intense here. And again, you can use masks and so forth to, take out certain areas where you don't want too much shadow. But overall, it does feel like it's starting to melt up against that background. Maybe a little bit too much, again, specifically here. So with that said, we are going to set our black point and white point now in our color correction. So again, we have our pre-mult here. I am going to add a clamp here as well. Always be clamping. Clamp, clamp, clamp. So I'm going to take my overall color correction here. move this stuff down, and so I make room for my Blackpoint and my Whitepoint. You can do it all with one grade node like we did in the previous demonstrations, where you do with the Blackpoint, Whitepoint, lift, and gain. In this case, we're going to separate them out because it's better production-wise to have your Whitepoint first, then your Blackpoint, so that you can make a color adjustment in between if you wish. So we're going to call this grade the Whitepoint. And we will take this and take a crop node, and I will offshoot this from the clamp, put my viewer to it, and I'm going to choose a frame. I'm going to make a sticky note here. I'm going to choose a frame that I'm going to analyze on. So I'll put this right here and say, analyze on frame, and I'll choose, it doesn't really matter what frame, just as long as I have the darkest dark in the frame. So analyze on frame 62. So there's going to be work where I'm going to be doing color correction here. That's going to change my Blackpoint, Whitepoint. I'm going to have to come down here and reanalyze my work to actually, again, clamp that black and white point and force it to match with the actual plate shot. So instead of resampling over and over again with, coming in and resampling the darkest area, this will actually do it for me in automatic. I just have to choose a frame, 62. You can actually animate this crop node like we did with the interactive lighting, and analyze it on any frame, but honestly, I just prefer just to keep things less work as possible. So here's my crop node, and I'm going to put my viewer to the clamp node when I do this. And I'm just going to choose the area here that I know is the brightest white of the actual scene here, or the CG. So that would probably be if I hit the letter Y and bring my gamma down, bring my exposure up. This is a great way to finding out where it is. And again, don't choose these three things here. These are colored buttons. You want to choose something relatively grayscale, because it's like shooting a gray card or something. So I'm going to try to grab this little area right here, and like that. There we go. So we got this kind of bright area. And then we'll take the crop node. Don't forget to hit reformat. You can view it now, and I'll hit F to frame. You can see what we have here. Pull it out. And again, if I close all these down and just sample this, you can see the values are a little bit more biased towards the red, it seems. So we've got a little bit of a red highlight going on there. Could be wrong. I don't know. We'll see. So at that point, I'm basically just setting my whites for this. So again, I will go back to my curve. Create a curve tool here. We're going to analyze the average of this, and we're going to click go and choose the frame we're currently always going to analyze, which is frame 62. We're going to hit OK. You can see that we've established our averaged white point here in the intensity data. So now I can double click the grade, double click the curve tool with the properties bin set to 2, and get this figured out. So again, I'm going to hold down Control, take the squiggly line, put it down to the white point. So I've established my white point, which you can see is very, very low. It's at 0.64, so just be aware of that. All right, so the actual comparison, of course, is our plate shot. So I'm going to put my viewer to the plate shot here, and we have the shot. And again, the plate shot isn't going to change at all. So unless I was color correcting the plate shot, I would do the same thing with the crop and an analyze and reanalyze each time if I'm making changes further upstream, but that's not the case. The colorist has given me this plate shot. I am not going to change it at all because that's what I'm supposed to do. He gets the opportunity to stylize the color correction after I hand him the CG work with the live action CG put together. To a certain degree, there are some collaborations, and depending on the liberties and that a colorist has versus the actual rights that the person in the CG department or the compositing department has. And so anyway, with that set, I'm going to click on my grade node here, and I'm going to establish my gain. So again, I'm going to click here get the dabber, and obviously the whitest white in the scene. If I hit the letter Y to go into the grayscale mode, you can see I can bring this down. I can see the whitest white is this cup. The white cup is white, so it's a great white card, kind of like a white point to go from. And I could come in here and just lasso grab this area and sample this area if I wish. And you'll see it because it's, if I take a look at the RGB version, it's got a heavy blue tint to it, so I'm going to be very careful not to grab too much of that. And again, I'm going to resample. Did it wrong there. I'm going to go ahead and resample that. So I'm just going to resample this area. So it's averaging all of these together by holding down Shift and Control. And I'm getting that. All right, so now that I've established that, let's see how this looks with the Whitepoint set. So I'll just put my viewer back to the original with the CG. And you can see things have brightened up a little bit here. And I'll just go ahead and just show you. So you can see we went pretty dark, and now it's matched up with the brightest white of the scene. So the dynamic range has been sort of expanded on the CG. The CG was relatively dull. And again, we can make adjustments with the multiplication if we wish, or not multiplication, like the gamma if we wish on this, depending. But we do have to establish the Whitepoint on here. Okay, so with that said, now we will come in here and add a another crop node. Okay. And I guess we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Again, I'll probably want to add some dot nodes here. So what I'll do is I will move a pipeline down here. I'll extend this guy up. And I'm holding down Control. I'm just making a couple of nice little dot nodes here. Not using any more than I need to. I had once used to draw pictures of animals with dot nodes. I don't know what the heck that was all about, but anyway, I'm just going to kind of make a nice 90-degree angles here. And in this case, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. And I'll just move this through here. And you guessed it again, we're still on frame 62. And I'm going to put my viewer to this dot node here. And I'm going to choose the darkest dark. So again, I'm going to come in here, hit the letter Y, and bring this up. And you can see the darkest dark is probably right here. So you can see if I kind of bring this up. Bring the darkest dark, there we go. I'd say like probably this area right here is probably a good area to grab. So I will grab this crop node here, and let's make sure I don't have more than one crop node up on the screen here. So there's a crop node. I gotta move it over to that specific area. And that's why we only analyze on this frame, because if I analyze on a different frame, this will be offset slightly. So I'm just going to grab this area right here and move it over to the darkest area, like right there, or whatever. All right, so we cropped it. We hit reformat, put our viewer to it, and you can see what it looks like. All right, we turn all this crap back on. You can see that if I just take a look at it, it's going to be relatively dark. And again, if you sample the colors, you'll see the color information might be slightly more bluish and greenish. It's hard to tell at this point. But at this point, we're going to use our curve tool to average. And I could just take this curve average and duplicate it. And just go in here and reanalyze. So I'll just go ahead and hit analyze. It's going to do frame 62 again. And there we go. So now we're going to add a grade node, and we'll set this grade nodes to the Blackpoint. So we'll call this Blackpoint grade. And there we go. And as you recall, at this point we put our viewer back here to the original plate shot. And this is with the shadows included, by the way. And we are going to choose the darkest dark in the scene, which is still probably this corner over here. So let me kind of X out some of this stuff here. So again, I got my viewer set here. I'm going to go to my Blackpoint, and I'm going to sample the lift to the darkest area. Should probably be like right there. All right. So we established that. Now we got to plug in our Blackpoint. So I got my privacy bin to 2. Establish that 2. Here's my curve tool. Go to my intensities. Hold down Control and drag that to my Blackpoint. Squiggly line. There we go. Don't forget to hit the number 4 or else it won't work. So you can see, there we go. And the Blackpoint average here is 000, which is surprising. So let me go back to this crop node and make sure I did everything correct. And I'm going to click here, turn off reformat, and go back and maybe resample a bigger area here. So I'm going to grab this area here, and I'm going to resample this. So again, I'll just take that, hit the reformat to reformat it, go to the tool sampler, go get the average, and now if we go and look at the intensity there, we are still getting 0, 0, 0. Let me see my clamp here. That's very strange. Let me just go ahead and see what area. If I go ahead and sample this area, let me just see what values I'm getting. So I am getting values. Ooh. I'm getting some weird values. You guys see that? Right there. So let me take a look at my clamp here real quick. And actually, let me do a... Let me add a grade node here. I'm going to say clamp Whitepoint, Blackpoint. Let's see if that does it this time. So I'll just go again. And take a look at our intensity. Now we're still at 0. Something is weird. Something weird's going on here. Let me put my viewer here. I'm going to resample this area, just see what values I'm getting. So it clamped the blacks and the whites. The values are very low. They're like 0.002. So let me go back to this crop node. And again, you got to turn off reformat. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this right there. And reformat. Come to my average. So here's the file itself. You can see if I bring up the brightness, there is data there. So now I'm going to do this average one more time. Average intensity is RGB. Grab it. And let's see what values we're getting now. We're still getting 0. Let me go back to my crop here really quick and turn off reformat. And I'm going to see if I could just grab, I'm going to grab an area like this and just make sure this is working correctly. So again, I'll just take this. Actually, let me take this to the white area here. I hit reformat, and you should see that piece right there. And then again, I'll just go and analyze and take a look at what we get. So yeah, now we're getting values that are still pretty low, which is surprising. I'm not sure why. Are those values that low? They must be that low. Let's let me take a look here. Put my value here. It's almost like it's, I don't know, I'm kind of shocked. Let me read the values on these. I guess it is that low, like 0.01, some of these. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to stick with that being the Blackpoint. So again, I'll just bring this over here and just go to town. So I'll just come over here, make sure I turn on reformat and reanalyze it again. So I do a lot of little finicky work on this. Okay, so the Blackpoint's been set on here so you can see it. So we'll go ahead, and it's really not going to make much of a difference though. And we have our lift established with the Blackpoint based on what we sampled in the original plate. So you'll see if we put this viewer all the way to the end, we'll see that there has been a dramatic lift occurrence in the actual blacks. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here's the off and on. So you see that? It's not big dramatic, but there has been a shift in information. Not just the luminance, but the chrominance value. It's probably got a slightly bluish magenta to the actual color information there. So you can emphasize this even more, if you wish, by coming in here and taking a constant and dialing in this information that we established over here. So again, if I take this over here to our plate shot, and I will do a crop node on the plate shot. And just grab that right there. And I'll grab this area right here. So I'll just establish this right here. This is our darkest dark, like that. And we cropped it. I'm going to hit reformat. So there's the color itself. And then, of course, we do an average of that. So we do a curve tool. And we will average the intensities, frame 62 in this case. And we can see the value right there, from which we can connect it to this information in our constant. So again, I'll have this property bin set to 2, click on the curve tool. We did this before previously. Take this information, drag it into the constant. Don't forget to hit the number 4 or it won't work. So you have all 4 values in there. Otherwise it's 1 luminance value. And then again, we can go ahead and merge this on with this and set this to hypoth. So I'll set this to, set this merge node to hypoth. And again, you can add a grade node here to establish the opacity with the multiplier up and down. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. We've just added more of the, sometimes you want to push a little bit more of the original shadow sample from the plate shot, the shadow areas of the Blackpoint. So again, this is kind of doubling it up a little bit. So if you take this and turn it off and on, you should see a little bit more of an increase. And again, you can take it and increase it more with this multiplier node. So you can see it's adding a little bit more of that shadow or that Blackpoint information in there if you wish. So obviously we need to make some room here. We've got a lot of stuff going on. So again, I'll try to hold down Control, drag this up, pull this out so I can grab all this. I want this all in my little, you know, traveling van, so to speak, if it's a better way to put it. And then this wording is being covered up, so I'm probably going to take the font size and bring that down a little bit. So I'll bring this down to like, there we go. So I got like a overall. So you can see as I drag it around, I can carry this stuff around. And then we're too cluttered in here. We got too much. There's just way too much. There's a need for some space. So I'm going to obviously come in here and just take this and extend this down. And you can label all this if you wish. So I could do some color correction in here. All right, so I'll just pull this down like this. So this analyzing reality here, right? So you have this tool here and this tool here. It's basically saying when you go back and reanalyze, you're going to sit on frame 62 and hit average, you know, analyze and go for both of these. So again, you could put this over here if you want. It doesn't really matter as long as you're, you know, if you're near here, you'll, oh, okay, go to frame 62. So we set the we set the white point, we set the black point, and then we have the just a little bit more if we want to kind of establish the black point influence from the original plate shot. And again, this I'm going to try to organize a little bit nicer and add a little 90-degree angle there. And you can label this too, so you can add a black backdrop to this and call this the analyze or average black point of plate. Obviously that title's a little too big, so I'll bring it down. There we go. So this again just gives a roadmap for other compositors on what to do. And I talked about the color correction node here. So if you feel the need to look at this and go, okay, now's the time to make a couple adjustments on this, right? So you can come over here to a color correct node and just start to play with this. So you can adjust the white point and the black point here. So if I go to the white point here, we have, again, multiplier offset. We'll basically offset your white point, okay? Because this is a subtraction addition process. Multiplication is a multiplication process, which will adjust your white point. This will change your white point and your black point, and gamma will not touch your white point and your black point. It'll just darken your midtones or lighten your midtones. So if you feel that the actual CG might be a little bit too dark, and again, this has to do with setting up your white point or whatever, you can, but I think we can kind of establish that and come down here and play with the midtones using the color correct node if we prefer. So if I come to the color correct node, we have the master gamma, and at this point we could start playing around, and it will not change the black point and the white point. It might change it a little bit, it's hard to explain, but now I can come in here and start to darken or lighten the midtone areas. And if you want to get a specific range in here for the midtones here, this is your master, you can come to your range here and establish what is your midtones. So that's by changing these 2 points. So if I only want to affect, if I want to affect the midtone areas between these 2 ranges, like 0.3 and 0.7, right? So I could do something like that, you know. Now if I come over here to the options here for, let's go to my midtones here, you can play with your gain, your gamma, and you can start to brighten up or darken up certain areas here. So you can see like this. You can also add some contrast to your the areas that are basically your whatchamacallit. But again, I could take this and darken it up a little bit if I prefer. Now things are still not right on the money because this sign obviously needs to be darker than these other signs. Like this sign looks okay in luminance. This one needs to be darker. This one's to be darker. These are many different things we're going to do in our next demonstration. But again, I just wanted to set up our black point, white point. We could do all types of little fun here, kind of establishing this. But we, in the next lesson, are going to be changing up things rather dramatically in this process to kind of start to mess with this and mix it in. So again, even your black point, again, you can play around with this. You can also come in here and go in between the grade of the black and the white point and start to shift colors, and it won't affect your black point change there. So it's totally up to you. So with that said, let's go on to the next lesson where we will begin to meld all this together with masks and just, you know, really get in here, and then I will show you the 3D based color correction masking.